Welcome to your brand new book. We are going to finish this before the end of the year. Just wait and see. The book starts with page 21, and we are going to do 4 pages today, but they're not all in a row. 21, 22, 25, and 26. 23 and 24 take a little bit longer, and so I'm just going to do those by themselves. All right, so let's do some of these together. We're going to do 4 of the 8. This is the distributive property. You've done this you've got a book called The Distributive Property. You've done quite a bit of it in that book, but I want to make sure you review it and you can recognize it in this book. So let's begin with number 5. Negative 2x minus 3n plus 1. Remember that in algebra, if there's not a number there, you assume that it's a 1. So there's an understood 1 right there. So if it makes it easier for you to distribute this negative, think of it as a negative 1. So then when you distribute, you can actually do the multiplication. So negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 1 times negative 3n is positive 3n. Negative 1 times positive 1 is negative 1. So the next step is to simplify this. As you can tell, none of these terms can be combined. But if you remember, I've told you there's a certain order to writing out an expression. You write the variables in alphabetical order, and then you write the constant last. So we have 2 variables. Each variable term has a coefficient and a variable. So we've got the x variable and the n. Alphabetically, n comes first. So this term will come first. 3n. Next is this term. It's negative, so I'll write minus 2x. And finally, the constant, minus 1. Now, this was designed to put your answer in here. As long as I can clearly see what your answer is, you don't have to put it in there. But if you have a lot of work written on here in order to figure it out, go ahead, you can put it in there. Then it's easy to find your answer. Look at number 6. Negative 4 times 2a plus 3b minus 5. Again, we have the distributive property. Well, we do on all of these. Imagine that. So let's start with negative 4 times 2a, negative 8a. Negative 4 times 3b is negative 12b. Negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20. Let me make sure I put these in order. Well, what do you know? It's already in order. Alphabetical order, A, B, constant last. They made that one easy. Okay, on to number 3. We are distributing the m. So how does this work? So m times n is simply m n, like that. M times positive 5 would be plus 5m. So that's all you do. Simple enough. Now number 7. If Sally's age is 3 times n plus 4, and Betty's is twice Sally's age, write an expression of Betty's age. So Betty is twice that. Betty is twice Sally's age. So let me first write Sally's age, because Betty's age is based on hers. That's Sally's age. Betty's is twice that. So if this whole thing is Sally's age, and Betty's is twice this whole thing, you would put parentheses around it before you multiply by 2. That's the only way to multiply 2 by the whole thing. When you do number 8 on your own, kind of helped you by color coding the 3 parts to this. You've got 3 times, and then you've got the product of a number and 6. So that is first, and then you've got these together, and then you've got this part last. I think if you break it into the parts, it'll be a lot easier to think about it. On to the next page. Page 22. This should be a pretty quick thing. I like when you have choices because it requires a little bit less of you to come up out of your head, but you have to think about what it's saying. And so I think that as we're learning this, especially with the parentheses and the grouping, I think as we're learning this, it's nice to have a little bit of guidance like this provides. We'll do numbers 1 and 2, and then 11 and 12 together. Find 1/6 of 9 times 3. Remember that of means times. A little times dot inside there. So you're going to multiply 1/6 times 9 times 3. Well, they made that one kind of easy. The other choices really don't even make sense, huh? Well then, so here is your answer for number 1. Number 2, multiply 9 and 4, and then divide 3 by the product. So multiply 9 and 4. So it would be something like 9 times 4. And then we were talking about product. So we're going to do the product of that. Remember, the product is the answer. So whatever it is, it's going to be the answer to this, which is 36. That's how we know we should put parentheses, because we need to have the answer first. In order to have the answer first, you have to solve it first. Then it says divide 3 by the product. We're dividing 3 by the product. So that ends up being the divisor. So 3 comes first. Pardon my writing. So that would have to be that one. If you guessed this one, you're dividing 3 by the product. So that's why you had to switch the order, even though this is stated first. Now down to number 11. Find 1/2 as many as 4 plus 9. Obviously, since given your choices, you can see that that really means of 1/2 of 1/2 times 4 plus 9. So it would be this one. I think that these probably should have been a little more challenging. Finally, number 12. Find 7 less than. Remember, less than changes the order. 7 less than the quotient. So something, 7 less than something. It's the quotient. So you're going to have division here of 2 divided by 8. 7 less than the quotient of 2 divided by 8. That would be this one. I did it in with the fraction bar, which is the more advanced way, but it means the same thing like this. So that's number 22. I think that the other 8 will be certainly understandable enough. I think these 4 were the wonky ones. All right, now let's skip over to page 25. Now you get to write your own based on just words. Look at number 1. Remember how of means times, you're going to have that quite a bit. These have parentheses in them, by the way. 2/5 of a number, 2/5 of a number decreased by 3. That one is pretty simplistic in that you just basically write exactly what it says. You just need to know that of means times and decrease by means minus. Use a variable for number. But other than that, it's pretty basic. When you get down to like number 3, I circled that because it's 8 times the difference. Since it's the difference, remember difference means the answer of subtraction. It means you've got to find the answer first. And the way to make sure you do the subtraction first is by putting parentheses around it. I circled every one of these where you have to find the answer first. It says the sum or the difference or the product or the quotient. That means that's got to be done first because you're working with the answer. So 8 times the difference between 8 and 7. 8 times the difference between x and 7. See how that works? Now, number 5. 1/3 times a number increased by 7. That's another one that it's laid out pretty simply. 1/3 times a number increased by 7. Now let's look at number 7. 7 and 8 both require you to do something to the answer of something else. 7 times the sum. So 7 times, you're going to have to do the answer first. The sum of twice a number and 16. So twice a number, we're adding the sum, and 16. 7 times the sum of twice a number and 16. 8 is for you to do on your own. The same with 11. You can take a moment and look at what I've done. Maybe that'll help you when you do it if you're still not completely sure. Let's do number 9, our last together. 5 times a number plus 6 times a number. We're doing this one because it says a number twice. So it doesn't say a different number. So it's going to be the same number. So 5 times a number plus 6 times the number. That's how that works. If it said 6 times a different number, then you would write maybe like M or something. But it's not a different number, it's the same number. So just take a moment and look over these and notice the ones that I wrote, I circled. And if you wanna do that on your own, you can. That might help you. If you don't need to, then no worries. But if you're not sure, if you think you can do it on your own, I would go ahead and circle them. But if you're 100% certain, yeah, I got this is easy, then don't worry about it. On to the last page of this lesson, page 26. There are only 4 on that one. Page 26. We will do number 1 and number 3 together. This is substitution. See if I can do this. Evaluate each expression showing each step in the order of operation in the spaces to the right. Circle each correct answer. What is the value of n squared times m plus r? Before I do anything, I'm just gonna write that here. You should always write, if you are, unless you're writing underneath it, if you're writing it out in a different place, you should always start with the given, the given equation or expression. N squared times m plus r. M is 4, n is 2, r is 4. So n squared would be 2 squared. I'm substituting in this row, by the way. Make sure that looks like a 2. It's so incredibly easy to get things wrong in math simply because you write something and you don't recognize it when you go back to refer to it. So, and it's a common mistake. And so it's one thing you need to really try hard on is making sure that your numbers are very, very legible and your commas and decimals are very legible. M is 3 plus R is 4. All right, in order of operations, you do grouping first. And this is grouping, it's got an operation inside, so I'll do this first. 2 squared times 7. Next, I have multiplication and exponent. Exponents go first. 2 squared is 4 times 7. That is 28. And we'll go over here and circle the answer. The next one we're doing together is number 3. It's got a negative, and so I just like going over negatives with you to remind you every time to put your negative integers in parentheses. So let me write my expression. Go ahead, make sure that you write the expression as well. Write it on the top. Take a moment and write the expression. After that, we'll go back and we'll substitute -2 for x. We're going to put it in parentheses. So -2 minus, and I'm going to have a parentheses inside of a parentheses. So instead of parentheses, I'm going to use brackets. If you prefer, you can do like a bigger and a smaller set of parentheses, whichever you prefer, but I think I'm going to go ahead and use brackets because it's very distinctly different and I don't have enough space to make one pair of parentheses much bigger. So I'll use a bracket. 3 times -2 plus 5. Close the bracket. Like that, you see? So take a moment and get this written down. Now, the next step, we'll do grouping. This right here is our grouping. So this is what we'll do first. Within the grouping, we have 3 times -2. That's going to become -6. So I'll rewrite everything I have and I'm going to simplify that. And when I do that, I'll be back to one set of parentheses. So I have -2 minus, and I'm just going to put parentheses here because I don't have one inside of another anymore. -6 plus 5. There, see that? Now I will do inside this parentheses because there's an operation. The reason we don't do this first is because there's no operation inside. You have a -2, but you're not supposed to add or subtract or multiply or divide. So the parentheses is not meant as grouping with an operation. So that doesn't count as first. This is a grouping that we're doing first. So -6 plus 5, that becomes -1. So I will rewrite this. So we have -2 minus, look, -1. At this point, I'm going to get rid of all the parentheses. We've got -2. Whenever you have minus a negative, it goes boom, boom, plus. Plus 1. That equals -1. Ta-da! Your answer is A. Now that we've done this page, remember to go back to the beginning of the book, finish all these pages, and you are done with this lesson. Next lesson will be 23 and 24.